So you've decided to put a motorcycle carrier on the back of your vehicle. There's a couple things, a couple rules of thumb you need to know before you go down that road. One of the first things you need to do is when you get your vehicle, inside is a manual. Inside the manual, there'll be a towing capacity. So the first thing we got to look at is your towing capacity for your vehicle. So you're going to put a trailer on behind. And the trailer goes something like this. Depending upon your towing capacity, let's say this trailer is at 2,000 pounds. Okay? 2,000 pounds means that this vehicle has enough braking power that when you have it loaded up to 2,000 pounds, it's going to stop you on an emergency. So it's going to force the vehicle forward because it has an extra 2,000 pounds pushing on it, but it has the braking capability to stop within a certain period of distance. The second part of the equation, so we got 2,000 pounds here. Now you notice that on a trailer, the axle is actually back further. It's not in the middle of the trailer. They actually shovel it back further. So what happens is the 2,000 pound weight that you put in it, some of the weight has got to go towards the front. So the second part, we don't load it at the back. You want it to be equally distributed in here, which will put extra force down on the tongue. So there's a thing in industry called tongue weight, and that's what is maximum push down on the tongue of your tow vehicle. And the usual rule of thumb is 10%. So if we go 10% of 2,000 pounds, it's equal to 200 pounds. So what it's saying is that your vehicle can stop the 2,000 pounds, but we need to have 200 pounds pushing down on the tongue. And that's a very important thing to figure out before you start doing anything, because that is what your vehicle is actually capable of when you load it up at the back end. The second part is that when you get your vehicle, and how it works is that here's the tongue sitting here. There's a thing called a 1/3 rule that everybody uses in industry. And basically what it means is if you go out here and you go out 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. So what here, 1 foot out from the distance, there's 1/3 of your 200 pounds that you lose. Out 2 feet, there's 2/3 of the 200 pounds that you lose. Obviously at 3 feet, 3/3, you cannot put 200 pounds sticking out 3 feet farther than the extra of your tongue, because you would know what would happen if you put 200 pounds out here. The torque would be so much that would just end up bending your hitch or making the thing basically untowable to not to be able to collect it. So you got to be aware of the 1/3 rule. So if you and this 200 pounds, by the way, is your apparatus plus whatever it is that you're putting on. So you got to think about that. What does your apparatus weigh plus what your bike weighs? So in this instance, you can only put a very small bike on it because you only got 2,000 pounds. Now that's the smaller cars, the really small SUVs and stuff like that. They don't have a whole lot of towing capacity, made for tent trailers and the odd little cargo trailer that you pull on behind. So the first thing you do is you look in the manual, figure out how much towing capacity you have. If it says you're at 2,000 pounds max tow capacity, that means you're 200 pounds on the tongue weight, and that's your guiding light. That's where you start. So when we go from there, we get that figured out, what your vehicle is actually capable of, then we go to the next step. What the next step is I got this little thing printed off on the internet. What the next step is what type of hitch goes with your vehicle. Now it's pretty obvious that you're not going to put a super big hitch on a very small vehicle because it just doesn't have the braking power to stop a really huge, massive weight that you're pulling around. So when you go get a hitch put on your vehicle, they're going to look inside your manual in your car, look it up on the internet, and find out what's your tow capacity, and that's the type of hitch that they're going to put on it. Okay, so the first type of hitch, and they go in classes, and the first type of hitch is class 1. So class 1 is a square hitch like this, just a square tube sticking out the back, and it's 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches, and it's good to 2,000 pounds, which translate for us 200 pounds that you can put on it. So at 200 pounds plus your apparatus, say your apparatus is 50 pounds, and that means you have 150 pounds left over. But remember, when you move a foot out, you're going to lose 1/3 of that. So now you're down to 100 pounds. So you have to be very careful how you place it and what bike whatever it is that you're going to place on there. So you might get a little Honda 80 or a Kawasaki 80 or whatever put on there. That's about as far as you can go. You might get 100 on there, probably not. Maybe it was older 100s, a little bit lighter. You might be able to get that on there, but that's where you're locked out. So Class 1 is almost a no-go for motorbikes. Class 2 is the same outline. So this is 1. I'm going to go on to 2. It's still 1.25 inches. It's still 1.25 inches. But we jump all the way up to 3,500 pounds, which translate into 350 pounds. So in a Class 2, remember, you think if you go a third out, you're going to lose, or go a foot out, you're going to lose a third. You're going to go down to 250. So you got to be really careful here too. You got to really watch what you're doing. So now you're into the 125s, maybe the 230s, the Honda 230s, somewhere around in that range, the smaller KTMs. That's what type of bike you can put on here. That pretty much maxes you out at 350 because your bike is not going to sit right against the truck bed. You're going to be out at least 1.5 feet or more. You're going to be out at that area. So you're stuck in that range. So all the 200, the 300 cc's and all that stuff are kind of stuck there. So that's Class 2. Next one up is Class 3. This starts to get a little more interesting because now you're at 2 inches, 2 inches, and Class 3 is at 5,000 pounds, which translate to 500 pounds. So same thing applies. You go a foot out, you're going to lose a third of it. So you're going to lose 100, 150 pounds. So you go out that. So most of the bikes and most of the ones that we work with, the main center point is usually around somewhere from the 15 to the 19 inches out from the back. So what will happen is now you're capable of, including your hitch, now you're up into the 350, some of the 400s, the DRs. You now can start looking at some bigger bikes to put on the back. But there's a funny thing happens from this point forward that's you really got to pay attention to. Even though you have the weight or the capacity, what happens is if you look at the back of a vehicle, well, I'll describe it. Class 4 first. We'll go up to Class 4 first. Class 4 is still the 2 inches by the 2 inches, but now we're at 1,200 pounds. So we're good to 1,200. So that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight you can have pushing down on the back of your vehicle. But here's, so we'll just go through it again one more time. Class 1, 1.25 inches, you're good to 200 pounds. You go out a foot, you lose a third of that. Class 2, quarter, 3,500 pounds, 350 pounds, but you lose a third of that when you go out a foot as a rule of measure. Class 3, 2 inch, 5,000 pounds, good to 500 pounds. Back it off a third. That's about where you're actually going to be at. And then the Class 4 all the way up to 2,000 pounds. So you can almost picture in your mind what types of bike go here, what types of bike go there, and what can be done here. This is a very interesting category. It's a whole new game when you get up into this area. So this carries most of our bikes. And once you get up into the big ones, up into the 800 cc and all that stuff, this is where you're heading with this guy. It's very difficult to put an 800 cc on something like this unless it's stripped down and it is a very light bike. So here's what happens. Here's where the cutoff is, and you need to understand this a little bit better. So on the back of your vehicle, if you do just a quick little pictorial of the back of your vehicle, here's your hitch sitting in the middle. So just picture in your mind, this is the 2 back tires, and you're looking at the back end of your vehicle. So picture in your mind, you're going to slide your device into this, and you're going to load it a foot out or almost 2 feet out. So what will happen is now it's going to push, it's going to torque, and it's going to grab this tube and it's going to move it down. It's going to get it twisted this way. Not only that, you got this bike out here, so what happens when you hit bumps and rolls, it's going to twist. So now you're going to get a twisting action. It's almost a 360-degree action wherever this bike goes. It's almost like a tail on a dog. It's going to be going all over the place, trying and twisting and turning, which is abnormal to a normal trailer that you pull. So this thing's designed to pull something. It's not designed to actually do the twisting and the turning and making all the welds, putting a lot of stress on the welds. So what happens is, what you got to think about is, once you're out far enough, and usually it's about the 350-pound bike, once you put your apparatus on, here's a little platform, here's your motorbike. There's your motorbike sitting there. So what's happening is this bike is forking up and down like this, it's twisting this way, and it's wobbling this way. So it's really taking this tube and giving it a good workout. So we figure about the 300, 350-pound range. What you got to do is you got to build an outrigger from your frame rail. You have to bring a frame rail outrigger out, and you got to attach it to the end of the bike. At least one point. You got to take, it'll handle the weight going this way, but it won't handle the torque going that way over long periods of time. Now we're talking about not just driving it down the street, we're talking about taking it, putting it on behind your motorhome or that, so you're nice and safe. You're going on a journey, you're doing thousands of miles. What you want to do is want to make sure you take this twist out. If you're scared about the twist, go to take the, we mainly recommend to take the hitch that it came with the vehicle, take it off, put an aftermarket hitch on. It gives you the opportunity to maybe weld in some gussets, maybe clean it up a little bit, make it more rigid, because they're just not, most of them are just formed channel or formed material, whereas if you get an aftermarket, it's square tubing, it's very well welded, inspected, all that stuff, so it comes up to be a real natural, a more stronger way to carry your bike. So this is when you get up to the 350 pounds. Now, when you get up into the 500-pound range, and you have no choice over this, you got to put a 3-point hitch on it. You just really, really, really have no choice. So you got to grab it here, you got to grab it here, and you grab it here. Because what happens on the bigger bikes, obviously the distance from the back of your vehicle coming out to where your bike sits, if you get a bigger bike, it's going to get further out. It's going to get further out and further out. And there's a lot of companies out there make a 3-point system where you can ride your bike on, and it basically lifts it up like this and puts it on the back. Mainly motorhomes or stuff like that when you want to ride a big bike, where you want to put it on the back. So that is saved for all the Harleys and the big Hondas, the Vulcans, all that stuff. That's what this technique is saved for. So you got to pay attention on how big your bike is and what you're going to have to do to modify your truck or to make it so that it's safe. Obviously, a 350-pound bike, and this thing is capable of towing 12,000 pounds, so it's not the weight of the bike, it's the torque of the structure that you have to deal with. You have to keep that torque of the structure out. So you got to make sure you keep that in mind when you're going this far. So once you get that kind of figured out what your towing vehicle is. So like step one, figure out what your max tow is. Max tow, that gives us the tongue weight. That gives us the tongue weight. From the tongue weight, then we can figure out what class we need to be, and then figure out from the end of your hitch, take out a tape measure, measure out a foot, measure out another foot. So you lose 1/3, you lose another third. I've never seen anything that's gone past 20 inches. 20 inches is getting out too far, because that's basically the middle of your motorcycle. Here's the truck bed. You come out. Here's the tire of your bike. Here's your handlebars. I do a horrible job at running the bike. But that basically what that means is never really ever gone beyond 20 inches. Usually it'll sit around maybe 19, 18. And the smaller bikes, you can get it down to about 15. All depends on where you sit. So the bigger the bike, the closer you want it to the back of your truck, the more beefier that you want your hitch tube from the torque angle, the more beefier you want to make it. So that gives you your rule of thumb. Once you're finished this, now you can go start looking for something. Go looking for an aftermarket motorcycle carrier. A lot of people go on to Amazon or eBay and they buy the $250 little metal slide-on ramp style with the tie-downs, put it on the back of the truck. They drive up I've seen 350-pound racing bikes on the back, and I'm scared to follow them down the highway of how dangerous that really is, because it serves no purpose. It just flies in the back like like a flag, and it's scary and it's dangerous. So you got to be really careful about how you judge this and how you put it together. So, that is how you pick the correct motorcycle carrier for the type of vehicle that you have, for the maximum braking power you have, for the maximum tongue weight you have. That's kind of the rule, the basics on how to pick a proper motorcycle lift.